Minecraft server dedicated to building. The average age of the players was 15 to 17, and we spent hours chatting every day on Skype. Very quickly we became close and we all followed each other on social networks. I got very close to one player, his name was Peter. He was in the same class as me, even though we didn't go to the same high school. I had heard rumors that he had a crush on laugh because we only knew each other online. At first everything was fine, but little by little I began to feel uneasy during our conversations. I began to catch him in little lies, which annoyed me, so I decided to distance myself and stop talking to him. A few months later, when we were no longer in touch, Peter sent me a message out of nowhere. He told me he was considering changing high schools to come to mine, so he could benefit from state tuition. His plan? Living alone, getting by financially while finishing high school. My stomach got out of nowhere. I tried to stay calm and told him his plan was insane. It was strange that my high school was chosen. He insisted it was a pure coincidence and that everything was going to work out. I was still hoping he was bluffing, but short his plane tickets to visit my high school and stay in my city. Fear took over me when I realized that Peter was totally serious, and that he had developed an unhealthy obsession with me. He wasn't bluffing. Even worse, he posted a picture on Snapchat from the airport. He suggested we meet during his stay. I refused. Later he posted more stories showing him taking a tour of my high school, filming and taking pictures, probably in the hope that I would see them. Luckily that day, I was at home with pneumonia, so I didn't have to confront him. For the next few days I was constantly on the qui vive, terrified that it would show up at my house. Fortunately, he never managed to find out where I lived, and he ended up going home, abandoning his project. What shocked me was that the rest of the online group never found his behavior odd. I felt like I was the only one who saw something alarming. I hoped that by refusing to see him and keeping quiet, he'd leave me alone. But 2 years later, right after I announced that I had been accepted into the university of my dreams, Peter reappeared. I had been foolish enough to keep following him on the networks to check that he wasn't lurking around. And then I saw a picture of him posing in front of the libraries at my university with this caption: "Transferring me here is clearly the right plan." I don't know if he really did. Later he found out I had a boyfriend. He contacted me on Skype for the first time in 2 years. Do you think he can protect you out of fear? I immediately blocked it and removed it from all my networks. I admit I've made mistakes. At the time I was young, scared, and surrounded by people who... He hasn't contacted me since, but that doesn't mean he's not watching me today. This is the story that taught me things in the worst possible way. You can roll your eyes and point out all the bad decisions I've made, and you'd be right. But I sincerely believe that you can only make good decisions by learning from bad experiences. I am a girl, and I had a friend at the time who I considered a brother. Someone I could confide in and in whom I had complete confidence. I met him at school during a 4th grade sports day. We'll call him Joshua. It was the last day before the holidays. We hung out with a group, we laughed, we had fun. Then we added on Facebook. He didn't write to me right away. It was only in the middle of the holidays that he sent me a message. A simple greeting, just to check in on me. I was very lonely at the time and hadn't had a real friend since elementary school, so I was flattered. We started talking regularly, and when I moved, he told me that he lived only 10 or 15 minutes from my house. It meant we could see each other from time to time. I was thrilled. I had never invited friends over before. It was new to me. A year later, we became best friends and had the same interests. We walked around town. We secrets. We did everything together, but that's where everything started to fall apart. Joshua wanted more than friendship, but I didn't feel the same way at all. I already had a boyfriend in Charlie, and Joshua knew it very well. He spent his time saying that Charlie didn't deserve me, that he didn't respect me, or that he said bad things about me behind my back. When I asked him for proof, he was silent. Looking back, I realized how blind I was. I put him in the friend zone and it drove him crazy. But at the time, I didn't really care. He even annoyed me. He insisted on joining my Skype calls with Charlie. He was told no because it was rare for me to talk to Charlie between his work schedules and my studies. Every time he refused. Joshua was texting me like, if you were really my friend, you'd let me join. Then 30 minutes later, sorry, I was childish. All my online friends, including Joshua, knew I was a big gamer. I had started a new online game, but I had avoided telling Joshua about it so he wouldn't follow me. He had already done it 2 times, and he always insisted that we play together. I had found a super guild that raided twice a week. Everything was going very well until he learned through a mutual friend in which I was. He signed up, joined my guild, under the same alias he always used. Impossible to miss it. He would start talking behind my back, harassing the girls in the group and pissing everyone off. And he thought he was funny. Every sentence was a rotten reference. He would interrupt our raids by landing on the vocal and blasting the music. He got kicked out and frankly, he had been looking for it. After that, I decided it was too much. I called him on Skype and ended our friendship. He didn't take it well. He insulted me, threatened to spill all my secrets to my friends, told me he was going to destroy my life. I hung up, blocked him, and thanked heaven I never had to talk to him again. But I had forgotten one crucial detail. He knew where I lived. I had been avoiding him for a month, spending time with my guild. I had no desire to see him again. Then, 3 weeks after our last discussion, something disturbing happened. I suffer from insomnia. At night, I often look at the streetlights out the window, and that's where I saw him. Josh was standing under the lamppost closest to my house. My room overlooks a small balcony that is easy to climb thanks to the legend hose. I have already sneaked in there myself. I often leave the window open because it is too hot. At night, I had no fan, and the AC was down. But that week it was very cold, so I closed the window. Thank God, 15 minutes later I saw it approaching, start climbing. I was paralyzed with fear, but relieved that the window was locked, otherwise he could have gotten in easily. I turned off my screen, hid in the dark, teeth clenched, shaking, trying not to make a sound. I couldn't leave my room. The floorboards creaked. He could have heard me from the balcony. It is also impossible to scream. My mother was out drinking and my little sister was sleeping at our grandparents' house. I was alone and I watched it. Approaching the window, he tried to open it. In vain. He just stood there looking into my room. It became a game of nerves. Every minute was an eternity. I had this awful feeling that if he heard me or saw me, he was going to break the window and get in. Around 5 o'clock in the morning, my mother's car pulled into the driveway. Total relief came over me. She saw him. She started screaming. I heard him come back down at full speed. At first, she thought I had invited her, but when she realized what was happening, she took me in her arms, relieved that I was safe. We called the police. But they said they couldn't do anything because there had been no attempted assault. Today, it's been a year and a half. I've never heard from Joshua again. It disappeared overnight, and frankly, it might be better that way. Wherever you are, Joshua, I hope you found help and moved on, because you were 2 fingers away from doing something irreversible. Let me tell you a story. The other day, I was just hanging out on my computer. Nothing special, classic teen stuff. I'm almost always connected to Skype while I'm on the computer in case a friend wants to call me out of the blue. So it didn't really surprise me when I got a Skype call while browsing Facebook. What surprised me, however, was that I couldn't see who was calling me. There was no name, just a blank space where the ID of the person trying to reach you normally appears. I thought it must be one of my friends playing a joke on me, so I told myself too bad and I hung up. There was no one there. The screen was completely black, so I threw a halo. No answer. I couldn't hear anything in my headphones. Not even the usual background noise you get when someone's microphone is on but they're not talking. I decided to type a message, just a little halo to still see nothing. I was going to hang up, but for some reason I can't explain. Instead of ending the call, I just opened another window, and just as I was going back to Facebook, a message arrived on Skype: "Don't walk away from me." Then I started to freak out a little, and I said, "Who is it?" And suddenly the sound came on, and I heard the muffled laugh like some kind of wheezing. The picture was still black, but it flickered for a moment. I couldn't make out anything. It was like trying to memorize a single image in a movie projected at full speed. Almost impossible. I was convinced that it had to be a friend trying to scare me. I have to say it worked. I was petrified. So this time I replied in a more aggressive tone, "Are you going to tell me who the fuck you are?" And then the muffled laughter resumed. Except this time it was coming from behind me. I was sure it wasn't in my helmet. I suddenly turned around. But it was too dark to see anything. With the Skype screen still black and my dark wallpaper, there wasn't enough light in the room to discern anything. I figured I was getting paranoid and the sound was coming from the headphones, so I turned back to my screen, and there I saw a little faint light on the beautiful Skype video. It seemed to be slowly getting bigger and bigger. I approached the screen, intrigued. Then a human head passed in front of the light. To my horror, it was my own face. As a girl, the creepiest thing with online games is clearly the weird interactions with random guys. Many of my friends outright hide their gender with a neutral nickname, no profile picture, and never speak in vocally if there are guys around. And since this is the case all the time, you can imagine. I've never tried to hide my true identity online. And above all, I wasn't going to let shady guys force me to hide. That didn't stop me from receiving really disturbing messages or experiencing downright creepy interactions. This is one of the worst. I'm on PC, so most of the time I go through Discords to play and chat. You can't get random messages from complete strangers like that. Unless you share a server. And since I'm on a lot of servers related to the games I like, I sometimes get DMs that are not clear. My favorite game is Dead by Daylight. For those who don't know, it's an asymmetrical horror game where one person plays a killer and the others have to survive and escape. Killer, never the survivor, and they become ultra bullshit. That's how I came across a player who played the clown all the time. I hate clowns, like really to the point that I couldn't even go see this with my Stephen King fanboy friend. My mother loves to remember that I was traumatized as a child by a clown at a birthday party. And in Dead by Daylight, the clown is a real horror, face dripping with dirty makeup, big belly, human finger hanging on his belt as a trophy. Anyway, when this player started playing with our band, I wasn't hot, but my buddies loved him. He played the clown vocal role with a creepy ones while stalking us. Even the toughest guys screamed like little girls. It was pretty funny as long as I'll have nightmares. I get one DM Discord from the guy, "You were super fun to hunt." I replied politely, "Haha, thank you. I hope I wasn't having too much fun hunting." And then I say to myself, "Please don't be creepy, don't be creepy." Finally, he just sent me 5 words. I would have liked it. Whether it was real was already creepy, but what really upset me was that he had clearly typed, erased, rewritten for several minutes. Finally, what did he mean at the base? What did he erase? I preferred not to know. The next day, we give them another game. Somebody says, "Hey, the clown guy is online. We invite him." I'm sorry, but I didn't want to spoil the atmosphere. Everyone seemed to like it, so I didn't say anything. He joins the vocal and direct. He says, "Ruby is here tonight." Except that I was already in the vocal. He knew very well that I was there, so he asked the question just to hear me answer creepy. And that night he didn't let go of me before. He was going after everyone equally, but here he was targeting me. I was unaware of all the others escape without pressure. The first time the others didn't notice. In the third set they started capturing, "Hey man, stop tunneling, Ruby. You're ruining the game." He ignored them and started blowing really hard into the microphone. Not the accidental kind of breath, no, a heavy, unhealthy, almost excited breath. We could hear his pleasure in stalking me so much that some threw salacious blacks on his condition after a particularly disgusting round. I begged my buddies to fire him. They eventually left him. Vocal and game. Relief, he had made me mad, angry, on the verge of tears. We played 1 or 2 more games with random killers. And then I went to bed, but I forgot to do something. I forgot to block it. The next morning I wake up to over 50 notifications, Discords. I click, it was him. I know I shouldn't have read it, but it was like an accident. Horrible but impossible to ignore. I remember some of the messages in a watered-down version. "You're happy now, you can't beat my killer, so you ask your friends to fire me, you've seen your face. You should consider yourself lucky that I'm interested in you. You're going to die alone, cold and forgotten. Do you think you're safe? I asked around, I know what city you live in, I could meet you tomorrow. I'm not sure I'll hunt you down in the game, and in real life you'll beg to die. My children will touch each other looking at the trophies I will take from your body." And it went on and on. They talked about hacking, finding my friends, my neighborhood, my full name. I ended up blocking it and installing one VPN and was offline for a few days. I hope he was bluffing, but this is probably the most terrifying experience I've ever had online. So, a piece of advice, especially if you're a girl, as soon as a guy gets ugly, block him right away. It will prevent you from experiencing what I experienced a few years ago. I was on a Discord server. True creepy stories, people told of their paranormal or strange experiences. Most were cliches like I saw a shadow at the foot of my bed like a failed horror movie. But sometimes some stories stood out without any supernatural elements, just realistic and terrifying. There's one I've never forgotten. The author explained that he was still young when it happened, but just thinking about it as an adult. It was stressing him out. His father died of an overdose when he was a child. He lived alone with his mother in a small apartment not far from his grandmother's house. His mother sometimes went out with men, hoping to find a father-in-law for him. That night she had a date, and since her grandmother was working, he stayed home alone. He was 9 or 10 years old. He said, "Don't panic." At the time, there was Yu-Gi. Oh, as long as he had his cards and cartoons, he wouldn't move from his couch. That night he was playing with his cards and watching TV when he heard a knock on the window. Nothing strange, it was a ground floor apartment, no need to climb. But pulling back the curtain, he saw the face of a complete stranger. Not a neighbor, not an uncle, not a stranger. He stepped back. The curtains have closed and there's spit the sound of green exploding. And then another splinters fall on the carpet. He shook his cards, ran to the back door and rushed to a neighbor's house screaming and banging on the door. Fortunately, they let him in. The cops arrived very quickly and searched the area. When her mother arrived, they all went back to the apartment and there, a cop approached her with a plastic bag. She turned pale, then she knelt down and hugged her son to her while crying. The neighbor just said, "My God." After that, they spent a week at grandma's. And it wasn't because a broken window took so long to fix. In reality, the apartment has been fully reinforced, new doors, new locks, cameras, all paid for by the grandparents. And it was much later that the author understood why what the cop had shown his mother in that bag was a picture of him asleep in his bed. It had been taken recently, his mother knew, because she had a new haircut or a new sheet she had just bought. It meant that the intruder had already broken into the apartment during the night to photograph him while he was sleeping. He probably made a collection of children of potential victims, and that night he had chosen her. What makes my blood run cold is thinking about that exact moment. The obsessed guy couldn't resist anymore and he came back. They seemed to find some peace when they learned that a man with a very similar modus operandi had been arrested and extradited to another state. He didn't know the whole story until he was an adult. There was no Hollywood conclusion, just a raw, brutal fact. This story disturbed me enough to leave the server. Sometimes, it's not the idea of ghosts or monsters, but real-life horrors that stay with you. My modeling career faced significant challenges after my client labeled me inadequate. I longed to change my appearance. That's when I discovered Dr. Ramirez. His clinic, located 40 minutes outside Cartagena, was reached via a rough dirt road as the paved one ended. During the drive, the Uber driver's glances hinted he anticipated my hesitation to proceed. When we finally pulled up to this squat concrete building with tinted windows, he shut off the engine, turned around, and mumbled a warning in Spanish as he entered the clinic. I was immediately enveloped by the stench of bleach. There was only one other patient, wrapped in bandages from head to toe, so motionless that I doubted he was even breathing. The receptionist slid in a stack of consent forms in Spanish, and after scribbling my name, she led me to Dr. Ramirez. At first glance, he looked rather repulsive. He wore a metal helmet for God knows what reason, changed you and put on the smock. The anesthesiologist will be here soon, Dr. Ramirez said in a rocky voice. I should have left immediately, followed my instincts, but I didn't. Once in smock and lying on the operating table, two people appeared with Halloween masks, a clown and a pig. Wait, what the fuck? I tried to straighten up, but hands caught me. Relax, they're just here to help me. Dr. Ramirez came in with an unhealthy smile. His eyes shone with joy, as if he had been waiting for this moment for a long time. The pig mask snickered from behind. The clown put a hand over my mouth while the man in the pig mask looked for something. I was held firmly on the table by two others. Dr. Ramirez hovered over my belly, ready to cut it open. His gloved hands fidgeted as if he could not wait to cut me. You sedate the grumpy, irritated Ramirez. But before he could inject me, my hand sprang out and knocked over the instrument tray. I grabbed the first thing I could, a scalpel, and I hit Dr. Ramirez savagely. I had cut deep into his arm. I then kicked the only light source above my head, breaking the bulb and plunging the room into darkness. Dr. Ramirez and his crazy assistants descended into total chaos. I crawled on the ground in the dark, using my hands to find the door. When I heard a child crying, I rushed into the dark corridor. I could still hear the chaos coming from this room. I saw another room to my left, and to my surprise, I found this little girl of about 10 years crouching in a corner. She was terrified. I asked her what she was doing here. The poor kid told me she was an orphan and that Dr. Ramirez took her from foster parents, not just illegal operations. This clinic was sinking deeper into the world of crime. I couldn't leave without the child. I took her and hid her head against my chest to protect her from further trauma. They're gone. I don't know, my darling. But we're leaving, okay? The doctor said my foster parents took money to send me here. His voice broke and my throat tightened, knowing that his foster parents had turned him over to a monster like Ramirez for money made me even more furious. She looked up, her eyes wet. You promise not to leave me, I swear, I said, squeezing her hand tightly. Not until we see the light of day. Without a phone, you can't call the cops. The only solution was to run and escape this hell. I heard them coming through the door. My eyes looked everywhere, looking for a hiding place. There were trash cans lined up against the wall, but most of them overflowed with bloody rag and tube. I finally found one that was empty. I put the child in there, cloth covers, and told him to shut up. I slipped into another one right next to it, avoiding any sudden movement that might betray my presence. I closed the lid just as their footsteps came out the back door. The air inside stank of rust and bleach, and I could hear boots squeaking on the gravel outside. He couldn't get very far, and he took the kid. Ramirez shouted. I held my breath, praying he didn't check the trash. The flashlight swept across the bin, casting flickering spots of light inside. I didn't breathe. Don't move. I prayed until everything blurred and darkness came over me. I pushed the lid gently and slipped out. I'm listening. The little girl was still hidden, shivering under the bloody rags. I called her and she raised her head. We waited a good minute before moving. I remembered the hum of the generator I had heard earlier. They were coming from the back. That meant there must be a service exit near here. We crawled down the hallway over broken glass and streaks of blood. The operating room door was ajar. I could see Ramirez inside screaming at his men. They all thought we ran away. We found the emergency door and ran to the road until the lights disappeared behind us. Finally, a man in a pickup truck found us and drove us to the police station. The police were called and the foster parents were arrested. They didn't find Ramirez in his clinic. He already knew the cops would be looking for me, so he ran off with his men. 2 months have passed since this incident. I work in a normal job. I saw Lucia in her new foster family last week. She is much happier and loved there. Frankly, I don't regret going to Ramirez's clinic. Without that, God knows what they would have done to Lucia. I'm sure Ramirez was stealing organs under the guise of surgery and selling them on the black. Wherever he is, I hope he gets caught before he destroys more lives. It had been a week since I broke up with Rafael, my boyfriend of 7 years, when the softball hit me in the face at 100 kilos Bulakemage during our company's charity game. I heard the crack before I felt the pain and saw the blood. I had lost my nose and cheekbone. The ER doctor said I needed immediate surgery. My insurance approved Dr. Valdez, a facial reconstruction specialist with excellent credentials. They repeated that I was lucky to have it on such short notice. What happened next remains unclear. I signed forms without really reading them, agreeing to things I didn't. Voice of the anesthesiologist telling me to count down from 10. I lasted until 3 before everything went black. I didn't wake up with the usual post-op pain. The pain was sharp. Almost alive. It was like something was tearing my skull apart from the inside. I tried to open my eyes to scream, but I couldn't. My body was completely paralyzed, and yet I was fully conscious and could feel and hear everything. Hand me the little scalpel and remind me what he wanted to change. Everything, the assistant explained. Nose, cheekbones and jaw. Even the orbital bones. He sent AI-altered versions of his face and wants them to look exactly like these images. Panic ran through every nerve. Someone had paid to replace my face without my consent. I tried to move and scream, but my body wouldn't respond. I could feel the burning on my skin, the tearing sound, and the hot liquid running down my cheeks. It is very accurate. To pay extra for the extra work, but that's illegal. No, she didn't consent to any of that. His form mentions corrections necessary during the operation. Legally, we're covered and he paid us. I felt hopeless and helpless trying to move. I concentrated all my will in my right hand, but nothing happened. How much longer? 2 more hours? Could be 3. We're essentially reconstructing his entire facial structure. I could no longer transforming me according to their unhealthy fantasies, and the pain kept getting worse. I could feel him working on my cheekbone, the vibration of the saw against the bone. Every nerve in my face screamed, but I couldn't make any sound. Then my finger twitched, and my hand moved abruptly. These constants are getting wild, doctor. Give him more crazy talk. A cold liquid reached my IV, but I struggled with all my strength, and suddenly my eyes opened. The surgical lights blinded me through the glare. I could see Dr. Valde, his stunned face above mine, scalpel still in hand. I had a breathing tube in my throat, couldn't scream, but I was struggling violently. She's awake. Her assistant grabbed my shoulders, but adrenaline burned through the paralysis. I ripped the tube out of my throat, felt it scraped all the way as I screamed, grabbed the instrument tray and sent it flying. Metal clattered everywhere, taking both of them by surprise. I rolled off the table and hit the floor hard. My face was on fire, hot blood running down my neck. Melissa, stop. You need to calm down. I crawled toward the door, my legs giving way under me, but I kept moving forward somehow. I reached the door, opened it, and fell into the hallway. Two nurses saw me covered in blood, with half of my face bandaged and the other half naked. They started screaming, "Call security, call the police." I collapsed on the spot. My cries drew more people. He surrounded me, trying to figure out what had happened while I was struggling. My coat was soaked with blood. My face was half made, one side bandaged, the other side raw flesh and exposed bone. I tried to talk, but my jaw didn't work well. Security had Dr. Valdez against the wall. Her assistant was crying, saying she was just following orders. Someone called the ER while another surgical team rushed me to a different block while they sedated me. I heard Dr. Valdez yell that I had signed the consent forms and that everything was legal. When I woke up hours later, a policeman was waiting by my bed. My face was now properly bandaged. The pain was alleviated by medication. They'd done everything they could to repair the damage, but the doctor's expression said it all. The police officer explained how hospital security seized Dr. Valdez's phone and found messages from Rafael, bank transfer confirmations, and dozens of photos of me edited with AI filters. Unlike my real face, the AI version had a more pronounced jaw, high cheekbones, and a perfectly straight nose like on Snapchat. He had hired someone to throw the ball in my face and bribe the staff to put me in the care of Dr. Valda. As soon as we broke up, he'd set everything in motion. I knew he was controlling and obsessive. That's partly why I broke up with him. But I never imagined he'd be so crazy. The anesthesiologist said I shouldn't have woken up. The drugs in my system should have kept me asleep for hours, but my body metabolized them faster where terror took over. If I had been unconscious for another 2 hours, the changes would have been permanent and I would have woken up like the girlfriend filtered through the eye. A from Rafael. Rafael took 15 years. Dr. Valdez, 20 years old. I had 6 months of corrective surgery to repair the damage. My face will never be the same again, but it belongs to me the worst. It's not the scars or the trauma. For 2 hours I was conscious, but paralyzed while my identity was erased. Because being human and real was too much for him, and there are many out there alive and waiting. Vegan had always been the popular girl in our school, showing off her gorgeous blonde hair and alluring smile. Everyone called her Barbie, and she wore that title like a crown. We were co-captain of the cheerleaders, which meant she saw me as a threat and tried to ruin my life as soon as possible. She surpassed me in everything, but what drove her crazy was my naturally fair skin and slim figure, assets she couldn't have without spending a fortune. So when she disappeared for 2 weeks over winter break, the rumors began. Immediately, Barbie Reagan had undergone cosmetic surgery and the results were going to amaze everyone. But when Reagan entered the room that morning, she seemed to want to disappear with huge glasses hiding half of her face, a medical mask over her nose and mouth, and her blonde hair slicked back. She moved stiffly and awkwardly, as if she were in pain everywhere. Things escalated when a teacher asked him to take off his glasses and mask. Reagan's entire body stiffened. She mentioned a medical certificate, but when asked to show it, she seemed lost. Reagan was rummaging through his bag when Tyler, another student, burst out laughing at the back of the class. He laughed at her in front of everyone. Reagan stood there completely frozen. Even with her big sunglasses, I could see she was calling her loser Barbie. Someone had done a TikTok comparing these cheerleader photos to botched plastic surgeries. By 1 o'clock, there were dozens. I'm not going to lie, part of me loves it. And that, after years of making other girls cry, it was like karma was finally catching up with her. By the time of training, Reagan had disappeared. Coach Stevens said she came home sick. I ended up staying late to master a new choreography. I finished around 5:10, 07:30, when all the school premises were empty. I was in the shower when I heard the cloakroom door slam so loudly that the sound echoed off the tiles. "Hello?" I cried, turning off the water. But all I could hear was the tasting water and the buzz of neon lights. I grabbed my towel and walked out. Suddenly, I heard this familiar voice in the distance. It was Reagan. "You make fun of other people's misery, don't you, Natalia?" She came out from behind a row of lockers, still wearing her sunglasses and that Reagan mask. "You've all made my life a joke." My stomach got knotted. Reagan, I didn't want to. She was crying behind her glasses. I took a step forward but stopped short. Reagan suddenly took off his glasses and I almost screamed. His eyes were completely abnormal, red and swollen, as if a blood vessel had burst in his head. She still wore that mask though. "I wouldn't have had to if you weren't there showing off that perfect skin." The surgeon said I could see her and that's all I wanted. She dropped her mask and I was horrified. His entire face was covered in rashes and stitches. In places his skin peeled off, revealing fresh wounds. His nose was so weird I had trouble recognizing Reagan. His lips were swollen as if stung by 1,000 bees. She started walking towards me with pure hatred. "Reagan, I'm sorry. Everyone's making fun of me because of you." I hadn't noticed that Reagan had scissors in his hand. Reagan puts it down. "The boys say I look like a monster, that I should disappear, that no one will ever like me." So if I'm a monster, I might as well act like one. She lunged at me and I barely managed to dodge. The scissors stuck in the locker where my head was just before. Reagan stopped, his scarred face twisted in rage. I grabbed my gym bag and swung it at her. She hit me on the side, tripping me. I ran, but the locker room was too small. She was right behind me, panting. Scissors rattling. If I can't be pretty. She grabbed my hair and pulled me back. She dragged me to the ground, and I saw the scissors rise towards my face. I raised my arm and the blade pierced it. Suddenly, I felt it slice through my skin and muscles, the hot blood flowing fast. When the pain came, I screamed. But I had to flee to save myself before she could harm me fatally. I struck her in the eye and she collapsed, appearing ill. I escaped immediately, leaving a bloody trail behind. Coach Stevens found me crying and bleeding in the hallway and quickly called for help, ensuring my safety. Law enforcement and paramedics showed up soon after. They discovered Reagan in the locker room, holding a pair of scissors, rocking back and forth while murmuring about wanting to look beautiful. Currently, I'm in the hospital, waiting as my arm gets stitched up. The doctor informed me that an extra inch could have been fatal as it might have hit an artery. It required 23 stitches to close the wound. Authorities stated that Reagan is being transferred to a psychiatric facility for evaluation. Her legal team might argue her breakdown was caused by harassment triggering a seizure. In addition, there were also failed surgeries that may have impacted her mental state. Although I believe contributed to her suffering by mocking her without consideration of the consequences. My sincere hope is that she receives the care she desperately needs. Furthermore, to those contemplating cosmetic procedures, think carefully, as countless fraudulent practitioners destroy lives under the guise of enhancing beauty. I was 15 years old visiting my grandparents before Halloween in Granger Hollow. It was a small lost town. But my cousin Evan acted like he knew it by heart and had been praising this fair for days. On Halloween night, we walked to the fairground on the edge of town. The place was lit with flickering torches and orange garlands. It bathed everything in an eerie glow. The air was full of smoke and fire and smell and hay and spicy cider. I have to admit, the atmosphere was really cool. There were bizarre trinket stands, cart rides in fake cemeteries, and crazy costumes. Evan quickly ditched me to pick up girls dressed as Disney princesses while I was walking around alone. That's when I felt a tap on the shoulder. I turned and almost jumped. Behind me stood a clown straight out of a nightmare. His suit was worn and patched as if it had been rotting in a cellar for decades. The makeup was thick and cracked, with a smile painted far too wide. Her pale blue eyes seemed to count every time I blinked. He held out a candy wrapped in plastic, but covered in hair and dust as if it had come out of a trash can. "You want some candy?" "Pet it out," he proposed with a grimace. I looked at the disgusting candy. Then his space, the vibe around him gave me goosebumps. "No thanks," I said, stepping back. He didn't add anything. Just stand there, holding out this disgusting candy. As I walked away quickly, I found Evan near the haunted house. He was always trying to impress his daughters dressed as princesses. Man, he one super creepy clown towards games. Really deranged kind. A clown is probably just Friendo, one of the giggling girls. It's like the legend of the village, you see. He used to be the mascot of a syrup factory that closed years ago. "Don't worry, he's harmless," Evan said without looking at me. "Just a crazy old man in disguise." But as I walked through the party, I kept seeing him out of the corner of my eye. A second, he was behind the apple stand. Then I saw him near the walk, in a cart or prowling toward the campfire. As soon as I stared at him, he disappeared. Every time I mentioned it to Evan, he laughed and shrugged. There, I grabbed Evan's arm and pointed my finger. "You see at the entrance of the corn maze, he fucks Evan chips." Evan followed my finger and saw Friendo frozen like a statue staring at us. "Okay, because you're my cousin," Evan scoffed, picking up a pebble. "Hey, Friendo, catch." He threw it at the clan. I saw the stone hit his forehead. Blood immediately ran down her face, mixing with the white makeup. Friendo didn't scream or grimace. He didn't even touch the wound. He stared at us for a few seconds, letting the blood soak his clothes before he melted into the crowd. "Damn, Evan, why did you do that?" "Don't worry, he'll get over it." But I felt like we just screwed up. The party was over. Families were gone, leaving teens and drunken adults staggering. Evan, tired of flirting, suggested we go back to my grandma's instead of the road. Evan insisted on cutting through the cornfield behind the fair. "It's faster." "8," he said. A thick fog limited visibility to a few meters. The ears of corn rustled above us in the wind. Halfway there was the hoarse, broken laugh like a gargle. Plus, it echoed in the field, somewhere behind us. "Did you hear that?" "Just whisper." Evan stopped walking. The laughter came closer. We turned and I saw a shape in the fog. Tall and strange, he staggered towards us, between the ranks. "Nothing," I exclaimed. "I or you." Dry blood blackened his face. He held a shiny object. As I approached, I saw that it was an axe. The dark blade was surely not rust. His painted smile seemed to widen, covering his entire face. "Run," Evans whispered, and we ran into the corn. Whipped by the rods, behind Frendo's laughter intensified. He seemed to enjoy the situation. I could hear his horrible laugh approaching, moving closer. Exhausted, cotton-legged, I kept running this way. Eva grabbed me and pulled me to the right. One emerged from the cornfield onto the road, sprinting towards the city lights. I glanced over and saw Frendo at the edge of the field, jumped his head. He wasn't chasing us anymore. He just watched the fog envelop him as if he were part of it. We ran to my grandparents' house, locked up, and spent the night in the living room, jumping at the slightest noise. Grandfather found us in the morning, the air of having seen a ghost when we told him, his face to pale. Avoid the harvest festival now, and he says softly. Some traditions here are better left alone. I don't know who Frendo really was, what he be. Celebrate Halloween at Granger Hollow again, because he dragged me to that Halloween party against my will, knowing that I hated parties and crowds and all that cinema. Julia will be there. Why are you telling me this now? Come on, man, she's cute and clearly interested. Interested was an understatement. Julia had been stalking me for months. It started when I had the misfortune of being polite to her at Starbucks. Then she would pop up everywhere I went, leaving creepy stuff. Dead birds in black cloth, jars of earth and hair. When I told her to let go, she smiled and talked about the good moon. This girl was completely crazy, but I couldn't let her run my life. I figured I'd enjoy the party, which I did, until I saw her again. She was on the other side, dressed as tent glass weapons. Her makeup looked like rotting skin. Cracked gray, glued to the bone, hollow eyes, red lenses, glowing like embers in the dim light, stringy hair on his shoulders. Could be a wig with lipstick smeared at the corner. I tried to ignore him, but I could feel his eyes following me everywhere. Around 12 o'clock, she cornered me near the kitchen. Dance with me, Eric. She purred hoarsely. Stay away. You can't run from fate. You're crazy. Get treated. She wrinkled her nose but pulled back, her lips moving, muttering to themselves. I didn't stay. Kyle was too drunk to see anything. I left discreetly 3 blocks from my house. A street light flickered. I ignored that and kept walking. But at the turn, there she was, this Gladys tent suit, rotten makeup and stringy hair. Instead of red lenses, her eyes were black like ink, not just the tube. The whole eye, like ink, had been poured into it. We have to finish that, she says. There's nothing to finish. Leave me alone. I tried to pass, but she grabbed my wrist. His skin was cold, his grip strong enough to leave bruises. You have no choice but to whistle. Before I could react, she grabbed a handful of my hair. Pain shot through my skull as she pulled, ripping strands of hair out. What are you doing there? She took out a twisted piece of wood full of thorns and wrapped my hair around it. Her voice deepened as if something was speaking through her. You belong to me, Eric whispered, her warm breath against my ear. Body and soul. The twig warmed near my chin before it burned. She broke it in two, still singing. The air got thick. You're crazy, I shouted, pushing her away. Finally, she stumbled without falling. I'd rather die than be with you, I screamed. It can be fixed. She laughed, attacking me with the twig, thorn towards my eyes. I ran into the street, my sneakers pounding on the concrete. I could hear those footsteps, but it wasn't a normal run. It was a strange rhythm, like she was dancing. I looked back, and immediately regretted it. She was moving abnormally, arms too loose, head tilted at an unsettling angle. But she was catching up with me. I cut through an alley, skipping bag and avoiding trash. Out of breath, I could hear those crazy jumps and laughs getting closer. When I looked back, she was 10 feet away, with this awful stretched smile. "Eric, you can't run away forever," she screamed. I stormed out of the alley onto the main street. My building was still 2 blocks away. My legs would tense up, but as soon as I slowed down, I could hear those good and those songs coming closer to the corner. I glanced back. Julia was only a few steps away, her hands outstretched toward me. I could feel the warmth of her body mingling with mine before she caught me. I dug my elbow into his ribs, strong. I felt him recoil. Hearing a crack, without looking twice, I sprinted away, as if my life depended on it. Maybe it was the step. I reached my building, slammed the door, and put all the locks on. I barely slept that night. As soon as I closed my eyes, I could see so many Gladys smiling. The next morning, Kyle broke the news to me. They found Julia unconscious on the sidewalk around 3:00 a.m. with a severe head injury. At the hospital, she remembered nothing. Not even his name or address. The weird thing, Kyle says, is all her hair strewn where they found her. Human hair and burnt wood. I touched my aching skull where she had pulled my hair out. Doctors said Julia's amnesia could be permanent. I feel a little guilty for pushing her, but mostly I was relieved. If she didn't remember me, maybe the nightmare was finally over. I never thought I was afraid of my phone, but every Snapchat notification freaks me out now. It all started a few months ago, when my buddy showed me some messages he was getting. We were hanging out in his room after class when he got super quiet and handed me his phone. The screen showed a snap of a certain Talon Lagoon. It was a video of a kid getting punched in the face and then beaten to the ground. The legend, who claimed that, will be next, turned my stomach. When I asked Preston who it was, he shrugged, but I could see he was freaking out. He told me they were called the Gilbert Goons and came from our school and others around here. Apparently he hurts people just for fun. In the weeks that followed, he continued to receive these kinds of snaps. Sometimes it was videos of fights. Other times, pictures of American fists or guns with creepy captions. You couldn't do anything if you swung, they beat you up. So we acted as if nothing had happened. A week before Halloween, and I went. I picked it up in my old one. Corolla him. In basketball, me in a simple vampire outfit. The party was wild as we arrived. Hundreds of people, most of them in disguise. Music blaring, smell of weed. Alcohol everywhere. We were hanging out by the buffet talking to high school buddies. When I saw my friend tense up, I followed his gaze and saw a group of older guys come in. Not disguised, just in jeans and hoodies. Seeing how the others made room for them, I didn't understand what was happening. We wanted to leave, but one of them blocked our way. I recognized him from some of the stories. Preston Billy, one of the kingpins. He grabbed my buddy's arm. When we tried to get around him, I tried to defend him. Mistress Ton stared at me with eyes cold and hard. He said my buddy had to have a little chat with him suddenly. 2 other guys were behind us and pushed us towards the garden. Once outside, away from the others, everything happened very quickly. Preston knocked my buddy to the ground, yelling at him for ignoring them. My brother tried to calm things down, but Preston didn't care. He hit him hard and he fell. I wanted to help, but someone held me back. I had to stand there and watch the guys beat him up. The sound of fists and feet hitting him was brutal. My buddy's body twitching with every shot that will haunt me forever. I can't even tell you how long it lasted. It felt like hours. Then I heard one of them say, "He's KO." They left him there laying on the floor motionless, blood on his face spread all over his suit. Then Preston, that arrogant jerk, stared at me with a smirk as he threw. "Your turn, vampire." Before walking away nonchalantly, as if nothing had happened. As soon as they were gone, I ran over to my buddy, shaking him awake. But nothing. Not a movement. My hands were shaking when I called for help. I stood there, his head on my lap, crying, begging him to wake up. In vain. The next few days are blurry in my memory. I went back and forth between hospitals and police stations explaining the incident, but in vain because my buddy never woke up. He died on October 30th, just 2 days after the attack. I thought it was over. It was all over, but I was so wrong. The day after she died, I received a Snapchat from an unknown tale. It was a picture of him in his hospital bed taken without permission. It was obvious. The legend from the next vampire. These facts are taken from a real drama in Queen Creek, Arizona, a suburb southeast of Phoenix. On October 28, 2023, 16-year-old Preston Lord was attacked at a Halloween party. Preston, a sophomore and basketball player, was there with his teammates. The party announced on Snapchat promised free costumes and alcohol. More than 200 teenagers from Liss and the area went there. During the evening, Preston and his buddies were confronted by a group of older guys after a friend filmed a fight. The situation has degenerated. Preston was knocked out by Talon Renner. Then others beat him up before fleeing. Witnesses saw someone dancing on Preston before he was dragged off the road. Police found Preston seriously injured. He died 2 days later. The group responsible, the Gilbert Guns, had been active since 2022, sharing their misdeeds on networks like Snapchat. 7 people have been charged with murder and kidnapping. Preston Billy, 18, Jacob Messner, 17, Taylor Sherman, 19, Talon Reiner, 17, Dominic Ferner, 20, William Owen Hines, 18, and Talon's Vigils have all entered pleas of not guilty as the trial set for July 2025 awaits further review due to the large volume of evidence. Chris and I had been working night shifts long enough to have our rhythm. But this night seemed weird from the start. The first time the black sedan appeared, the clock read 12 o'clock. I saw her walk around the parking lot slowly, then disappear, leaving dust and anguish behind her. It returned at 01:10, then again at 01:45, repeating the same slow circuit. I tried to see inside, but the windows were too tinted. When I mentioned it to Chris, he shrugged and said, "They may be lost. It's a Mayan highway." We got back to work, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was going to happen, and it happened around 2 o'clock in the morning. I was scrubbing the counter when I heard doors slam. I looked up to see 2 guys in black hoodies approaching. I could alert Chris. They kick down the door, make a noise, and you'll be the last one to yell at one of them, pulling out his penny gun. His wish, he held a crowbar, as if he knew how to use it. His accomplice pulled out a hunting knife. The box now screamed, startling me. I tried to open the crate, but my hands were shaking too much. Chris came out of the kitchen and instantly, gently, turned pale, and he says, "Hands in the air, take what you want." The guy with the knife jumped the counter and pushed me. I stumbled at Chris's feet as the thief took the money, grunting in disappointment. $340. Where's the rest? He demanded, scrutinizing everywhere, talking where I begin to decide. That's all we have. Please. We didn't stutter. He answered me with a slap so violently that my ears rang. Lie again and you'll see him whistle. Chris tried to intervene, but the man with the crowbar stopped him. The blow hit his ribs, knocking him to his knees before he could get up. The thieves pushed both of us to the back of the shop. He kept demanding money, shouting obscenities between blows. When he still couldn't find anything, the guy with the knife cracked. But before he could get to me, Chris pulled me and shoved me into the freezer. He slammed the door before I could react. Chris, I threw myself against the door, but it wouldn't budge. Through the small steel window, I saw everything collapse. Chris was already bleeding from his ribs, but he stepped between the thieves and the freezer, yelling at them to back off, to leave us alone. Face blowing his nose off. Still, he didn't let go. I don't remember ever feeling so helpless and scared. When they finally hit Chris hard enough in the temple, his hands let go, and I froze. I watched in horror as the guy with the held himself off the ground and pinned him right in front of my window. He was on top, trying to control the type of blood all over his face and dripping onto the man beneath him. That's where the guy with the iron bar shot him in the back of Chris's skull. My best friend has become inert. The guy with the knife pushed him away, let him roll on his back before driving the blade into his stomach. The scream tore the room apart. It was a wet scream, broken and full of pain. The guy pulled out the knife and stabbed him again. Chris's body twitched and he made a choking sound. The third time the blade went in, Chris didn't make any noise. His hand just went up like he was trying to hold on to something. The blood was spilling on the floor so fast that I couldn't see it. The two guys realized what they were doing and ran away panicking. Chris was lying on his back, his arms were spread, and there were 3 holes in his torso. Blood gushed with every heartbeat. His mouth opened and closed, but only blood came out. He tried to breathe but couldn't get any air. He turned his head toward the freezer, his hands slipping across the floor, leaving a trail of blood behind. He pressed his palm against the door, right where mine was. On the other side, 6 steel chutes separated us and I couldn't reach him. I saw his lips move. I couldn't hear him through the door, but to slide slowly, it left a long red trail on the white door. His eyes remained open, still in my direction, but they saw nothing. What I remember most is the cold seeping into my bones and staying there. How I screamed until I completely lost my voice. How did Chris's blood look almost black under the bright lights instead of being red like it should have been? I don't remember who found us or who called the police, but I remember begging the paramedics to save my friend. They tried for 18 minutes, but 3 stab wounds and massive internal bleeding were irreversible. In the end, Chris lost the battle. Police caught his thugs 6 hours later at a motel 2 cities away. From there, they still had the knife and $347 in cash. It was the price of my best friend's life. It's been 9 months, and I still can't get over it. I don't think I'll ever make it. Sometimes late at night, I still feel that icy cold. I see Chris's hands slide over the door, leaving this red trail behind. The storm hit around midnight, causing the McDonald's sign to wobble and the windows to shake. I worked at the drive, which meant wearing that stupid helmet and pretending to be happy. Night shifts weren't usually so quiet, but the storm had driven everyone away. I was wiping the beverage dispenser when the headset beeped. "Welcome to McDonald's, that I may serve you." Crackles crossed the line before a male voice came through, as if someone was calling from the bottom of a swimming pool. "Medium fries, vanilla milkshake." "Okay, move forward to the first window." I looked at the camera screen, but I couldn't see a car or headlight. There was only the empty parking lot and the loudspeaker hammered by the pouring rain. Sir, are you still there? I waited about 30 seconds, then pressed the button again. Sir, if you have a problem with your car, the headset beeped. Medium fries, vanilla milkshake. He repeated. I checked the camera again, but I still couldn't see it. Sarah, I called my manager. The drive-through camera's not working well. Someone's ordering, but I can't see anyone. Sarah stepped closer and squinted at the screen. Probably because of the storm. Go see what happens. I grabbed an umbrella and pushed open the side door. The rain soaked me instantly outside. The parking lot was empty except for our 2 cars. I headed for the driveway. Suddenly I spotted tire tracks. They looked fresh, crossing the puddles and leading from the speaker to the back of the parking lot, but they didn't turn toward the service window like they should have instead. They went straight behind the trash cans into the forest, as if the car had gone into the darkness and disappeared. I hesitated for a moment, but I couldn't ignore the tracks. I followed them deeper into the woods. Headlights flickered through branches barely visible in the rain and trees. A silver sedan was wrapped around a huge tree trunk. The whole front had crashed like a tin can. Steam rose from the destroyed engine, and the windshield was covered in spiderweb cracks. I pulled out my phone with a shaking hand and turned on the flashlight. The driver was still in his seat, slumped against the door, eyes closed in a business suit, drenched in blood. The entire left side of his skull was in. Fragments of bone protruded at angles that made my stomach turn. And I could see his brain matter through his bloody hair. He was swimming in a pool of his own blood. His jaw was barely attached by shreds of flesh. My God, I whispered as I backed away. My hands were shaking, and I could hear my heart pounding in my ears before I could call for help. The women lit up, blinding me, as if someone had just put them in the spotlight. Then a voice whistled directly into my ear, so close that I felt a cold breath on the back of my neck. Did you forget my order? I turned around, but saw no one behind me, only trees, rain, and darkness. When I looked at the car again, the dead man was sitting upright, eyes wide open, staring at me through the shattered windshield, while blood flowed from his shattered skull. I felt he was neither dead nor alive. I ran through the woods panting with fear and shock. I didn't stop until I walked through the back door of McDonald's and slammed it. I told the manager everything. Sarah made the call while I stood by the locked door, peering into the darkness. Police arrived about 15 minutes later with paramedics and a fire truck. I guided them into the woods, though all in me wanted to stay inside where they were clear and safe. The car was exactly where I'd left it, still wrapped around that tree, but the headlights were dim again. Now the horn had stopped. The driver was slumped against the door, his eyes closed, just as I had found him the first time. One of the paramedics' hours. My voice came out, higher than I wanted. But I heard him. He spoke to me, son. Given the damage and body temperature, he must have hit that tree around 8:00 tonight. The cop shrugged, but the headlights came on. Short circuit due to accident. And he explained, when going around the wreck, it happens sometimes. The battery still has a little juice. It makes the lights flash randomly. I insisted that I had spoken to him, but they all looked at me like I was crazy before they resumed their photos and measurements, and then loaded the body onto a stretcher. I saw them slip him into a black body bag, and the last thing I saw was his ravaged face, disappearing behind the plastic. The cop came up and told me the guy's name was Robert James, 42, insurance salesman from Seattle on the wet road and ended up in our woods. They told me it happens more often than you think. No one heard the crash because of the thunder. No one knew he was there until I found him. I resigned the next day. I told them I was going back to school, needed to focus on classes, any excuse that didn't make me look crazy. But I know what I saw, what I heard. Sometimes late at night when it's raining hard, I hear 17 years old that November, working the closing department at McDonald's on Granville Street in Vancouver. It was a Friday, almost 11:30 p.m., and the rain was pouring down. My colleague Aria was mopping by the toilet while I wiped the tables, both of them staring at the clock. Another 30 minutes, and we could close. That is when a man is holed. At first, he looked like an ordinary late-night customer, soaked, fixing his clothes to me. A dark hoodie and washed-out gin was soaked and clinging to his body. But what caught my attention was what he was holding in his hand. It was a handmade doll about 30 centimeters long, with button eyes and brown wool hair tied in a messy ponytail. She was wearing a McDonald's mini uniform. "I can help you." I managed a tight smile. My eyes kept coming back to this hideous toy. He didn't answer right away, just continuing to stare with his pale, moist eyes that didn't blink. Then slowly his lips curved into a smile that turned my stomach. "You're even prettier in person." His way of saying it sounded less like a compliment than a confirmation of a fact already known. Aria looked up from her mop. "Are you ordering something or what?" Water splashing in his shoes. "You always tie your hair the same way. You always clean the table from the left. You're so simple and predictable. It's so cute." My heart stopped. He knew my name and my habits. Who are you?" The words came out shakier than I would have liked. His smile became wilder. "I brought you something." He held out the doll and I saw it clearly now. The wool hair was exactly the same shade and length as mine. The button eyes were as hazel as mine. Around his neck, a small paper label with Anna written in a slanted handwriting. I made it myself. He beamed. "It took me 3 months to get the details perfect. The freckles were the hardest part." He turned the doll's face towards me, and I saw 3 little brown dots sewn on her fabric nose. "Aria's going to get Dave," I said in a strangled voice. "Aria's not moving, is she?" He snorted as he pulled the knife out of his wish pocket, the blade reflecting the fluorescent light. My heart skipped a beat when I saw him press the knife against the doll's belly. "You know how long I've been waiting for this moment." His voice broke all his nights in East Easting's 3rd floor corner apartment. "You'd better close your bedroom window, my beauty." My legs almost gave out. "Dave?" Aria cried, backing toward the kitchen. "You have to understand, Anna." The blade sank deeper into the doll's cloth belly. "You belong to me from the first time I saw you 6 months ago. I knew it, and if I can't have you..." He lowered his eyes to the doll and plunged the knife. The fabric tore with a wet noise. Instead of stuffing, the doll was filled with blood-soaked sponges, raw meat, and tubes of red gel. When he pulled the knife up, everything spilled out. A thick, dark liquid with pieces of red cloth dripped down his hands before splashing the white tile. The smell of iron and decay hit me immediately. I felt like throwing up. "You see," he said, laughing, clutching the doll until the mess inside stabbed her again and again. Each shot sent more red splattering the floor and his clothes. The wet meat inside made sick, sucking noises as the knife went in and out. This is what happens to girls who don't listen and ignore someone who loves them. I watched in horror as he grabbed the doll's head and twisted it until it popped off. More blood and tissue poured out. Slipping along her arms, he lifted the severed head, its butt and eyes. Dave burst through the kitchen door with Arya behind him. What did the man turn back? Knife in one hand, doll's head in the other, red syrup dripping everywhere. For a second, no one moved. Then the sirens started screaming outside, getting closer, and his face distorted. "They're gonna take me away from you." And he let out a choked voice, backing towards the door. "But they can't keep me away." He clutched the doll's head against him, staining his wish red. The police came in just as he reached the gates. He didn't resist. He stood still in the rain while he handcuffed him. He articulated something. I couldn't hear anything in the chaos, but I could have read her lips. Eyes closed. "You're mine." He watched me secretly during my services, maybe even followed me home at night. His name was Marcus Hendrick. Schizophrenic. No medication, no family. That was 10 months ago. I moved to another city, changed my number and dyed my hair blonde. I took a simple job in a bookstore where I never had to work evenings. But some nights I wake up at 3 in the morning, convinced I hear breathing at my window, convinced I see someone in the shadows across the street. The worst part is knowing he's still out there in a cell somewhere, counting the days, thinking and planning, because distances and walls and bars don't do anything to people like Marcus. They don't forget, and they know how to wait beyond eternity. Yeah.
Enjoy.